The crystal chandelier cast rainbow prisms across the marble floor of the Pemberton Mansion's grand foyer, but 8-year-old Isabella saw only shadows. She had been silent for 3 years, ever since the car accident that took her mother's life and left her trapped in a world where words seemed too dangerous to speak. Her father, tech mogul William Pemberton, had spent millions on the finest speech therapists, neurologists, and child psychologists money could buy. But Isabella remained locked in her silent world, communicating only through gentle nods, sad smiles, and eyes that held depths of sorrow no child should carry. William watched his daughter from his home office doorway as she sat curled in the window seat of their library, a picture book open but unread in her lap. At 42, he commanded boardrooms and built digital empires, but he was powerless against the grief that had stolen his little girl's voice. The specialists all said the same thing. There was nothing physically wrong with Isabella's vocal cords or brain. Her silence was emotional armor, protection against a world that had already hurt her too deeply. The mansion felt more like a museum than a home these days, filled with expensive art and uncomfortable silence. William had hired the best nannies and tutors, but Isabella merely went through the motions of childhood. A ghost in designer clothes who moved through their vast, empty house like she was afraid her footsteps might shatter something precious. Everything changed on a rainy Thursday morning when Mrs. Chen arrived for her interview, Elena. Chen was not what William expected when his assistant scheduled the meeting. At 63, she had silver-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun, gentle hands marked by decades of honest work, and eyes that crinkled with the kind of warmth that comes from raising 6 children and fostering dozens more. Her references were impeccable, but she lacked the prestigious credentials of the other candidates. No degrees from elite universities, no specialty training in childhood trauma, just 30 years of loving children as if they were her own. "I don't speak with fancy words. Mr. Pemberton," Elena said during their interview, her slight Filipino accent adding music to her voice. "But I know hurt children. I know how to wait for them, how to make them feel safe enough to heal." William was skeptical. His daughter needed more than kindness. She needed professional expertise, cutting-edge therapy techniques, the kind of specialized care only money could provide. But something about Elena's calm presence made him willing to give her a chance. Perhaps because she was the first person in 3 years who hadn't promised to fix Isabella. On Elena's first day, she did something that stunned everyone in the household. She ignored Isabella completely. Instead of the usual attempts at forced interaction that previous caregivers had tried, Elena simply went about her work, preparing meals, tidying rooms, humming soft Filipino lullabies as she moved through the house. She acknowledged Isabella with gentle smiles when their paths crossed, but made no demands for attention or response. By the end of the week, Isabella was following Elena around at a distance, drawn by something she couldn't name. Elena never turned around to look, never tried to engage, just continued her work while occasionally speaking to herself in a mixture of English and Tagalog, as if carrying on conversations with invisible friends. "You know, Isabella," Elena said one morning as she prepared breakfast, still not looking directly at the girl, "my grandmother used to make the most wonderful hot chocolate." Not the powder kind. Real chocolate, melted with milk and a secret ingredient that made it taste like a warm hug. Isabella crept closer. Curious despite herself, Elena continued her monologue, describing her grandmother's tiny kitchen in the Philippines, the way steam would rise from the pot like morning mist, how the whole house would smell like comfort itself. She spoke as if Isabella wasn't even there, but every word was carefully chosen, every story designed to paint pictures of safety and love. On the 10th day, Elena finally turned to Isabella and said, "Would you like to try some? I found all the ingredients yesterday." Isabella's eyes widened with interest, and she gave the smallest nod. That afternoon, Elena transformed the mansion's sterile kitchen into something magical. She pulled out an old, battered pot from her own supplies, explaining that some things taste better when they're made with love rather than expensive equipment. Isabella perched on a stool, watching with fascination as Elena melted real chocolate added milk, and then reached for a small vial of what looked like golden liquid. "This is the secret," Elena whispered conspiratorially. "Vanilla extract from Madagascar, but not just any vanilla. This comes from pods my cousin grows herself. She sends it to me every year, and I save it for very special occasions." As the hot chocolate simmered, Elena began to tell Isabella about her own childhood, not the sanitized stories previous caregivers had shared, but real memories of loss and healing. She spoke of her younger brother who had died when she was Isabella's age, how she had stopped talking for months until her grandmother's hot chocolate ritual slowly coaxed her back into the world. "Sometimes," Elena said softly, stirring the chocolate, "our hearts need time to remember that the world can still hold sweetness." When the hot chocolate was ready, Elena poured it into 2 simple mugs, not the fine china that usually graced the Pemberton table, but sturdy ceramic cups that felt warm and safe in small hands. She handed one to Isabella and took a sip from her own, closing her eyes as if the taste transported her across oceans and decades. Isabella lifted the mug to her lips, inhaling the rich aroma that seemed to carry all of Elena's stories within it. The first sip was like tasting memory itself, not just chocolate and milk, but love, patience, and the promise that broken things could still hold beauty. As the warm liquid touched her tongue, something inside Isabella's chest loosened, like a knot that had been pulled too tight for too long. Tears began to flow down her cheeks, not the silent tears she'd cried so many times before, but tears that came with sound, with the release of 3 years of held breath. And then, so quietly that Elena almost missed it, Isabella whispered, "It tastes like Mama." The mug slipped from Elena's hands, shattering on the marble floor in a crash that brought William running from his office. He found his daughter sobbing in Elena's arms, but for the first time in 3 years, the sobs came with words, broken, whispered words that tumbled out between tears like water finally flowing from a blocked spring. "Mama used to make hot chocolate," Isabella cried, her voice rusty from disuse but growing stronger with each word. "She said it was made of hugs and dreams and all the time she loved me. I thought if I stopped talking I could keep her words safe inside me forever." Elena held her close, understanding flooding through her. "Oh, sweet child," she murmured. "Your mama's words aren't trapped in your silence. They live in your heart, and every time you speak with love, you're sharing them with the world." William knelt beside them, tears streaming down his face as he heard his daughter's voice for the first time since the funeral. "Isabella," he whispered, "we don't have to keep Mama's memory locked away. We can honor her by living, by speaking, by sharing all the love she gave us." In the months that followed, Isabella's voice grew stronger, but she never forgot the lesson of Elena's hot chocolate. Every difficult day, every moment when grief threatened to steal her words again, Elena would appear with 2 simple mugs and that magical vanilla from Madagascar, reminding Isabella that healing doesn't come from forgetting pain, but from finding the courage to let love exist alongside it. Sometimes the most profound healing comes not from expensive treatments or professional expertise, but from someone who understands that the human heart needs permission to feel safe before it can remember how to sing. And sometimes that permission comes dissolved in hot chocolate, served with infinite patience by someone who knows that love, like vanilla from Madagascar, becomes more precious when it's saved for the moments that matter most.